All right, guys. The name of this message is going to be called Frienemies. And I'm sure many of you have probably heard that made up word. If not, I'll tell you what it means. It simply means someone who is an enemy, but they try to portray themselves as a friend. So they basically took the word friend and enemy and put them together to make frenemy. Someone who is a frenemy. There's different reasons why someone may be a frenemy. It could be in some cases that it's a person that really was at one point genuinely a friend of yours, and then later they became an enemy, but they don't want you to see it or realize or fully believe that they're an enemy. So it's almost kind of like, like they're trying to keep you close, keep close ties with you because maybe there's some type of a benefit in keeping ties with you. But really, behind your back, behind closed doors, they're plotting against you. They're really secretly an enemy. Or sometimes it could be just somebody who already didn't like you, already didn't care about you, or maybe they just found they were trying to find some kind of way to get away with something, and maybe they just view you as an easy target. And so they'll suddenly latch on to you to make it appear as though there's somebody who really likes you and who would really like to get to know you more. And they just pose to be somebody who could be a friend, but really it's just an act. It may just be an act from day one. So it could be someone who already was a friend who suddenly changed their mind about you, or somebody who just suddenly comes on the scene, but from day one, from the very start, they really don't have good intentions in mind. And so that's what this is going to be about. It's going to be about dealing with frenemies, things that you must remember while dealing with folks that may be frenemies from a Christian perspective. And we're going to be looking in Psalms chapter 35, if you're following along with me in the word, Psalm 35. And we're going to just jump right into this. And this is David talking about enemies and him talking to God about his enemies. But as I read this, getting ready for this sermon, it really felt like the direction I should go in for the sermon for whoever needs this message isn't about necessarily just enemies, but more specifically frenemies. So even though he's talking from the perspective of enemies, I got to use this in the context of frenemies. And there's actually a point here in this chapter where it does seem like some of what David's dealing with is some frenemies, and we'll see that here soon. But anyway, just starting here at the beginning, it says, "Plead my cause, O Lord, with them that strive with me. Fight against them that fight against me." Now, don't misunderstand this. He's not saying, God, I want vengeance. Take vengeance out on them, because we know vengeance is for the Lord. That's what the word says. That's not what it is. He's simply, listen, I'll put it to you this way. What he's basically doing is he's putting pride aside, and he's saying, you know what? I gotta admit, I can't deal with this on my own. I can't deal with all these folks coming up against me and plotting and scheming against me on my own. God, I need your help. I need you to fight this battle for me, because I can't do it on my own. And many times as Christians, we get into these situations with enemies or frenemies who we see things from a distance, and folks may think we don't see it, but we see things plotted, schemed against us, and we're thinking, man, how am I going to deal with this? It's like I'm being pressed on every side. How do I deal with this? I feel like I'm outnumbered. I feel a bit overwhelmed, a little bombarded. But the best thing you can do is to seek God. Not say, God, this is what I want you to do to them. You got to get vengeance. You got to, kill them. You got to strike them down, all this other stuff. Just say, God, listen, I need your help. I can't fight this battle on my own. I need your help in this one. However, let me also say this. One of the issues with folks sometimes that do this, and it seems like things might not quite work out for them the way they wanted to, is simply because they may be in the wrong. They may have been the frenemy, but then when it seems like their plots and schemes aren't working, and the one that they came up against, they got some serious arsenal going on. Now the frenemy that was doing all the deceitful stuff, now they feel backed in the corner. So then all of a sudden they want to try to play the victim, right? Like they were the victim the whole time. And so then they start praying to God, oh God, oh, my enemies are coming after me. Oh, they're doing me wrong. Oh, you see what they're doing, playing innocent like they ain't got no blood on their hands. You know what I mean? Like they didn't start it. Not to say you shouldn't pray if you genuinely, are ashamed of what you've done. You genuinely are to a point where you're willing to admit, hey, I shouldn't have got this mess started. Not saying you shouldn't pray to God and seek for help, but at least be honest with God. You can't trick God. He knows when you're being full of crap. Instead of trying to play this victim or trying to play this damsel in distress, why not just be honest and say, okay, God, I was wrong. I came up against these folks. They were innocent. They weren't doing nothing wrong. I did all this stuff out of jealousy, out of spite, out of envy, out of wrath, out of payback, out of this, out of that. God, I'm sorry. Please help me get out of this. Please help me to correct this. Please help me to make this right. Not playing the victim. You might fool other folks around you, but you cannot fool God. So if you're praying, wondering why it seems like God isn't quite moving the way you want him to fix this situation, the question that I do need to ask is, did you start it? Are you the frenemy or enemy and you're just pretending to be the victim like you've been the innocent one this whole time? Because maybe it's not that you don't need to pray or seek God's help. Maybe you need to simply be honest with God about what you've done and about the help you really need. Just something to consider. Verses 2 and 3 says, take hold of shield and buckler and stand up for mine help. Draw out also the spear and stop the way against them that persecute me. Say unto my soul, I am thy salvation. So in those couple of verses, it's David's fancy ways of saying, God, defend me, be my shield, help me right now. Because really, you're my best defense. No real life shield, no bubble around me is going to help me in this particular situation. I can't duck and dodge and run and hide forever. I need some real defense here. I really need you to back me up. There's no greater help than you. Verse 4, let them be confounded and put to shame that seek after my soul. Let them be turned back and brought to confusion that devise my hurt. What he's really saying here is this. What he's basically saying is, God, give them a wake-up call. Show them the reality of all this. It's like he's saying, God, take a mirror and put it up to their face and let them see what they've become. Let them get to a place where they have to acknowledge what they've done so that they can be ashamed of themselves and see that what they've done has not been right. It hasn't been righteous. And sometimes that happens with frenemies or enemies. Sometimes there's moments where they, in their mind, it's like they're justified in coming up against you and doing all these terrible things against you, bearing false witness, pretending that you did and said certain things, saying things about you to others that are not true, to assassinate your character, to make other folks feel the same way about you as they do, even though they have wrong feelings towards you, things not justified against you. And so a lot of times folks just need a wake-up call. In their mind, nothing's wrong with what they're doing. But then you also have those who play dumb and who know better, but they play dumb and act like what they're doing against you is okay, it's no big deal, you're nobody, you're a nothing, you're not worthy, blah, blah, blah. But he's basically saying, God, wake them up, show them what they've done. and let them be ashamed of it. Verse 5. Let them be as chaff before the wind, and let the angel of the Lord chase them. Let their way be dark and slippery, and let the angel of the Lord persecute them. He's not saying, I want to be able to go and get back at them the way they've done me. He's not saying, well, God, let me persecute them back the way they've done me. He's not saying, God, let me go get up in their face and cuss them out and give them a piece of my mind the way they've done me. He's saying, Lord, you take care of it. Let your angels take care of it. Verse 7, for without cause have they hid for me their net in a pit, which without cause they have digged for my soul. What he's basically saying here, if you think about it, is this, and we'll see how this plays out. It's almost like David knows and understands that a lot of times when folks set traps for you and they do these things for all the wrong reasons, they set themselves up for disaster. They set themselves up to fall into their own traps, into their own pits, into their own nets. Sometimes, listen, don't get me wrong. There are moments when you got to speak up for yourself. You've got to stand up for yourself. That's something that I not too long ago talked about in a sermon some weeks back, standing up for yourself. And so there will be times when you might have to show people, look, hey, there's traps set for me. You got to see this. I'm being done wrong. But there are some times in some instances where there are certain things you got to let it play out. In other words, when you see that they're not going to stop, but you see that they're setting themselves up to back themselves into a corner, as mean as it may seem sometimes, instead of trying to be the hero, instead of trying to rescue them, there are some times where, unfortunately, you've got to let them fall into their own trap. Because until they get tangled up in their own trap, they're not going to stop. I'm not saying to necessarily wish bad for them, but I'm just saying that there are moments where it kind of like the saying goes, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Sometimes they have to get to a point where they have to see that they cannot stand or withstand what it is that they try to put others through. So why should they set these traps up and think they're exempt from having to go through those things? They have to have their own wake-up call sometimes. Verse 8, let destruction come upon him unawares, and let his net that he hath hid catch himself. And to that very destruction let him fall. So we see that. We see that here in verses 7 and 8. He's talking about the nets being put out, the traps being set, but the pits being dug up. And then verse 8, he's saying, let that destruction come upon him. But he's not asking for just any type of destruction. He's not just wanting, lightning and fire to come down from heaven and eat them up. He's saying, let their very traps, let their very tricks trip them up for the sake of their wake-up call, for the sake of them seeing what they're putting other folks through and seeing that it's not so fun. You can't dish out what you can't take. Basically what it comes down to. Verse 8. Let destruction come upon him unawares, and let his net that he had hid catch him, and to that very destruction let him fall. Verse 9. And my soul shall be joyful in the Lord, it shall rejoice in his salvation. In other words, he's choosing to not be so down in the dumps about the fact that he has all this stuff going on around, stuff going on against him, stuff being plotted against him. He's choosing to be joyful about it. He's choosing to rejoice in the fact of salvation. He's rejoicing in the fact that he's saved in the Lord, just like how he knows that God's going to save him from the destruction of his enemies. Because salvation in God can also mean being saved from the hand of the enemy. Not to say that the enemy can't plot and scheme. See, we have this mindset sometimes that when we become a Christian, and the more we become all professional Christians, so to speak, because that's how we act, like there's these levels of Christianity, like being a pro-Christian or something. But we think when we get to this certain level, we're supposed to always just be untouchable all the time. The enemy can't do anything against us. No one can ever plot against us. No one can ever say any bad thing or lie against us. And what happens is we get our feelings hurt because those very things that we think isn't supposed to happen anymore starts to happen. The weapons will be formed, they just won't prosper. We say it all the time. We know the word says, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Doesn't say the weapons won't be formed. It just means they won't prosper. So yes, weapons will be formed. Yes, people will plot and scheme against you. You listen, there's no special level you get to where everything is fine and dandy. And you've heard preachers say it a million times, and I've said it quite a bit myself. It's like the saying goes, new levels, new devils. The higher up you go, the more the enemy's gonna try to come after you. But you must know that thanks to your salvation through Jesus Christ, you have God on your side. You have the one who is going to help you through it all. Okay, I'm just gonna move on. Verse 10. All my bones shall say, Lord, who is like unto thee, which deliverest the poor from him that is too strong for him, yea, the poor and the needy from him that spoileth him. False witnesses did rise up. They laid to my charge things that I knew not. And that goes back to what I was just talking about. People not only lying, but even bearing false witness, saying, oh, I know they did this, and I know they said that, and I was there when they did blah, blah, blah. And I saw it when they said da, 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 da. And it won't even be true. They may see you do something, and they'll say to somebody, you did something totally different. Or they'll say, I was there, and I saw it, when they don't even hang out around you, really. But they'll say they were there at the same place at the same time you were to see you do or hear you say something. They weren't even there, or they were, but you weren't there. You know what I mean? You'll have people do that. You'll have folks that social media, that's a great place for stuff like that to play out. You got folks that get what they call that keyboard courage. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Get on that keyboard and act all tough and bold in ways that they wouldn't face to face with folks. And start all types of drama and try to twist your words because you're not there actually in person to defend yourself. So they'll twist your words and try to make it sound like you were saying this, that, and the other. And y'all know how it goes. But he knows it. David knows it. There will be false witnesses that will rise up. Sometimes it'll be the frenemies or enemies. Sometimes the frenemies or enemies will even do things to persuade people, other people, folks you don't even know, to come up against you and bear false witness. It could be kind of like what Judas did to Jesus, selling him out for the silver, or even kind of like what the Philistines did with Delilah, getting her to take bribes or money for the purpose of trying to find out what Samson's weakness was. You'll have folks that they'll use money or anything, attention, higher positions in the workplace, just having fancy titles. I mean, just all kinds of stuff, all kinds of ways to bribe folks to get what it is that they want, because they have the mindset of the more people I drag into this and play the numbers game, the better. The more likely we are to overcome this person that we're lying about and lying to and lying against. But you must continue to keep your head up, pray to God about it, know that he has it, and in due time God will expose them. Verse 12, they rewarded me evil for good, to the spoiling of my soul. It's like David saying, these folks are folks that I've been so good to. And this is the part where I start thinking, maybe he's not just talking about enemies, but even frenemies, because he's talking about folks that he's been good to. I've been good, but it's like they reward my good with evil. I try to be nice to them and they do something rude or mean right back to me, when I've just tried to be nice and cordial and civilized with folks. But that's what he's saying. Verse 13, but as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. Now, if this word sackcloth sounds familiar to you, you'll notice in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, there's moments where it talks about folks putting on something called sackcloth. It's like this really rough, coarse material that can be made out of hemp or other things, but it almost has like a mesh look to it, like if it got rained on, the water could easily get through it, because there's like very tiny openings just because of the way that the material is woven into this pattern. But it's this material called sackcloth, and oftentimes when you read in the Bible of somebody putting on sackcloth, they're usually doing it as a way of mourning. And by mourning, I just mean like for example, grieving, being sad or upset about something. So if someone dies, you might mourn for them. And so what they would do a lot of times is they would put on this material called sackcloth. And a lot of times when you read about that in the Bible, it might say something along the lines of, he put on sackcloth and shaved his head and his beard and was mourning, or he ripped his clothes off and then he put on sackcloth, or he put on sackcloth and he fell and he sprinkled ashes on his head. It'll be something real over dramatic like that. But those were different customs that they would do to show mourning, to show sadness, to show that they're grieving about something or upset about something. It was like a way of expressing and showing, hey, I'm mourning something. And so that's what David's saying here. He's saying, listen, when I did good, they did all kinds of evil against me. But when they were down and out, when they were sick, when they were sad, when they were upset, when they were having a rough time, I didn't treat them the way they treated me. I was wearing sackcloth. In other words, I was mourning for them. I was showing that I cared about them. I was taking time out of my time to openly show that I felt for them. And some of you probably have experiences like that, where you're so good to somebody and it's like they keep rewarding you evil for the good that you do, right? And then when they're going through a hard time, instead of going, that's what you get, it is payback, karma bit you in the face, right? Instead of having your little nanny boo boo moment, instead you show concern towards them. I'm concerned about you. Are you okay? And you would think that would be an eye-opening moment for them, like, oh wow, they do care. And for some folks, they just but anyway, it's pretty crazy. But that's that it just it's for example, I know somebody, she's been really good to another person, and recently that person she was so good to broke the window of her car out. And the reason why this person did it is because they were mad at somebody else, somebody that the woman was related to. So they were mad at somebody the woman was related to, but instead of messing with that person they were actually mad at, they took it out on her. But the woman is trying to be good to this person and has bought stuff for them and made sure they had food and bills paid. And it's like, no matter how nice this person is, this woman is to this person, the person keeps rewarding them with evil. And it's bizarre, but it's just, it happens, man. It just happens. But continuing on with verse 13. Well, let me start at the start of verse 13 again. It says, but as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned into my bosom. So he did some praying. He showed concern. He would pray. He would fast, meaning going without food for some time or going without something that he desired for a while to get attention from God, to get an answer from God, and praying to God about it. And it says here in verse 14, I behaved myself as though he had been my friend or brother. Yeah, you rewarded me for evil, but now that you're going through a hard time, I'm going to show you concern. I'm going to pray for you fast, and I'm going to act as if you're still a great friend of mine, or even a brother, someone close to me, someone dear to me. Continuing on with verse 14, it says, I bowed down heavily as one that mourneth for his mother. That's you can't deny the heart of this God right here, or the heart of this guy right here, David. He had heart. I mean, someone does you wrong, and then when they're going through something, you mourn for them like you would mourn for your own mother. Wow. Verse 15, but in mine adversity they rejoiced and gathered themselves together. So again, when the tables turn and he's going through something again, even though he just showed compassion to these folks, they're happy again. They're rejoicing all over again that David's going through a hard time after he just got done mourning for them like they're his own mother or brother when they were going through something hard. So it's almost like he's saying again, they're showing evil, rewarding evil for my good. They were already doing it, but then when they were going through a hard time, I showed concern. But now that I'm the one back going through a hard time, they're going right back to rewarding evil for my good. They're rejoicing now. They're having a good time seeing me go through this. I wasn't rejoicing and jumping up and down when they were going through a hard time. I was, mourning and being sad and concerned for them. And now they're jumping up and down happy at what I'm going through. Continuing on with verse 15. Yea, the abjects gathered themselves together against me, and I knew it not. They did tear me and ceased not. With hypocritical mockers in feast, they gnashed upon me with their teeth. And that's something that I want to pause there and say, for those of you dealing with frenemies, heck, let's face it, the word itself, frenemies, shows hypocrisy. Being a hypocrite, saying one thing and doing something else, trying to be a friend and being an enemy at the same time. That's a key word with frenemies. Some folks would rather just have enemies than frenemies. I mean, at least you know for a fact they're an enemy. With frenemies, they're so hypocritical and two-faced. You don't know whether you're coming or going. You don't know if you're making progress with them or not. You don't know if y'all are going to be civil with each other or not, or if they're going to go back to paying you back with evil for your good. You just don't know. But yes, they can tend to be a bit hypocritical. One moment they love you and they support you. The next moment people are around and all of a sudden they act like they don't even hang out with you. They act like they don't support you and they don't support your gifts or your talents. They're wishy-washy on whether or not they got your back, depending on who's around and what other folks are going to think or say, or when it is or isn't beneficial to them. Verse 17, Lord, how long wilt thou look on? Rescue my soul from their destructions, my darling from the lions. He's saying, God, how much longer will you see this and not do anything? Lord, help me, rescue me. I need your help. Verse 18, I will give thee thanks in the great congregation. I will praise thee among much people. He's saying, regardless of this, and regardless of the fact that I haven't quite seen your hand move to deal with this yet, God, I'm still going to give thanks ahead of time. I'm going to have thanksgiving anyway. And not only am I going to do it, but I'm going to do it in the congregation and among much people. I want to pause here to say this. A lot of times when things do not go our way, we get mad at God, or, God's not doing the things that we want in the timing that we want. A lot of times we get so mad or frustrated that a lot of times We even get to the point where we don't want to go to church because we feel like, well, if I go to church, I'm going to be obligated to praise and worship God during praise and worship time. And I just don't want to do that because he hasn't done what I wanted yet. So I don't want to show him any love right now. That's not how it works. And David knew that. That's not how it works. You can't always wait until you get your way to start thanking God and praising him. You do it in advance. Even when you don't feel like it. And sometimes we get so down in the dumps, we don't feel like saying, oh God, you're wonderful, you're magnificent, you're marvelous, I magnify your name. You don't want to say all that. Sometimes when you get in your flesh and you got your pity party going on. I know about it. I know how it goes. I have my moments too. But you can't let your flesh override your spirit man so much to the point where it keeps you from wanting to praise God. You have to thank him in advance because you're also, listen, you're showing your faith to God and you're stretching your faith with God when you do that. So it is important to show God that you're going to love on him and worship him even when things are not going as smooth as you want it to. Nobody wants to be in any kind of relationship with somebody where that person is never happy until they get what they want all the time, when they want it, how they want it, why they want it, where they want it, so on and so forth. It's important to show true love, true respect, true appreciation. Verse 19, let not them that are my enemies wrongfully rejoice over me. Neither let them wink with the eye that hate me without a cause. So he's saying, Lord, they're wrongfully rejoicing. Wake them up to this. Stop this. Verse 20, for they speak not peace, but they devise deceitful matters against them that are quiet in the land. So he's saying, it's like he's saying they're speaking and they're saying all these things. And anytime there could be peace and everything could be calm and peaceful, it's like these enemies or frenemies are always coming up with deceitful ways and speaking things into the atmosphere to disrupt the peacefulness in the atmosphere. And it's like they're trying to cause trouble for those who are trying to be quiet and not speak negative into the atmosphere. It's like they're just really ruining it for those that are really trying to just have some peace of mind, some peace in the atmosphere. It's like they're just trying to ruin it with deceit and evil devices. In verse 21, yea, they opened their mouth wide against me and said, aha, aha, our eye hath seen it. Opening their mouths wide to talk trash about things that they supposedly see, but he just got done talking about false witnessing. So they can go around being all loudmouth, going up to everybody, talking about this, talking about that, about stuff that they say they're seeing with their eyes. You must remember, not everybody is your friend. You have to accept the fact that there will be some folks who will act like they saw things, or even at times they do see things, but instead of keeping their pie hole shut, they would rather go off and open their mouth wide and just almost like a vacuum cleaner. As soon as they open their mouth, it's just noise. All they got to do is just let everybody know. You know what I mean? They got to be loud and make sure everybody in the general radius knows what's going on with you. Whether it be stuff that they're lying about seeing or stuff that they really did see or hear or whatever. And they got to amplify it. They've got to blow it all out of proportion. Make it be about stuff that it's not. They've got to get stuff started. They got to stir up the pot. But they'll be coming back around. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes, but not seriously. They'll be coming back on around to look and investigate some more. That's how it is with frenemies. They're gonna come and look and see. Then they gotta go be vacuum cleaner again. Right? Be loud, let everybody know. And then when they calm down off their high and their battery's low, or the plug their plug got unplugged out of the socket, they come right back over to you, looking, seeing what they can see, and then when the next thing you know, they get charged up, they go right back at loud as the mosquito truck, just just letting everybody know your business, even when it's not, they know it's not right. But that happens, and you gotta pay attention to stuff like that. A lot of times, and this is what I've noticed, a lot of times when we are the type of people who maybe we're used to being unpopular, maybe we're used to not having a lot of friends, sometimes we'll be the main people that fall for it, because we think, well, because see, we want to give folks the benefit of the doubt and say, well, maybe I'm just misunderstanding it. Maybe, they really are good friends. They really are true friends. Maybe it's just in my head that they're a friend of me. Maybe it's my imagination that they don't mean well. And we go into a state of denial because we feel so happy to finally have friends, or plenty of friends, instead of just like 2 or 3. So we go to this state of denial so that we can believe that all these people that are now around us care about us. And we have a hard time accepting the fact that we've opened up to some folks and loved on to some folks and shared things with some folks that really just don't mean us well. And so we have a hard time accepting it. And when you have a hard time accepting it, you have a hard time letting go. And you got to understand that there are folks out there who know that. They know that whenever a person feels unloved or unliked, they know a lot of times that type of a person can be an easy target. It'll be easy to latch onto them and do them wrong without them accepting the reality that you don't mean well. Or that that they don't mean well. So you have to love yourself. And I know I talk a lot about, we all in ministry talk about love, loving your neighbor as yourself, loving God, loving Jesus, loving folks. And yes, that's true. But one of the things that we also got to talk about and realize and accept is that we have to love ourselves enough. We have to have enough love, self-love, and self-respect. I don't mean being conceited and holier than thou and on a high horse and being all hoity-toity, acting like we're better than everybody. I don't mean that. I don't mean arrogance and having an ego and all that. I'm just saying that it is okay to have love for yourself and some self-respect, to know when to say no, to know when people are doing you wrong, and being able to just kind of back up from the situation and guarding yourself and watching what you say and do around certain folks that are just them vacuum cleaners, those human mosquito trucks. I mean, really, you just gotta. 23, stir. Oh wait, where am I? Hold on. 22. This thou hast seen, O Lord, keep not silence, O Lord, be not far from me. And that's something else we must remember, that God, sometimes it seems like God is far from us. We get mad sometimes and we think, God, where are you? Listen, I've been there, done that. Trust me, I've had my moments where I'm having my pity party. God, where are you? Why aren't you doing something? But we must remember that he is not far from us. The more you cleave to him, the more you'll know that he is not far from you. He will never leave you or forsake you, as the word says. Verse 23, stir up thyself and awake to my judgment, even unto my cause, my God and my Lord. Judge me, O Lord, my God, according to thy righteousness, and let them not rejoice over me. You see that in verse 24 at the start? Judge me, O Lord, my God, according to thy righteousness. A lot of times when we get mad at folks, Whether we're just mad at something silly or mad in a situation like this where we're tired of dealing with enemies or frenemies or whatever, a lot of times we get quick to want God to judge someone. Judge them, God, put a sentence on them, but sometimes when we pray, we really need to say, God, judge me. Or another good way of putting it is this: we need to be one that say this prayer a lot. We need to say, God, search me out, search my heart, see what's in me. Instead of being so quick to say, God, look at them, look at what they're doing, search them out. Sometimes we need to back up and say, God, search me out, search my heart. God, see my intentions in this. And I want you to see, God, if my intentions are pure right now. And if you see any impurity in me, any wrath in me, any bitterness in me, any hatred in me, any unforgiveness in me, Lord, search me out and reveal it to me and remove it from me so that I can be in right standing with you. Judge me, Lord, by your righteousness. Sometimes we got to take a step back and say, God, look at me. We're always, God, look at them. Sometimes we just got to be like, God, hold a mirror up to him, but man, hold one up to me. Show me what I need to see. Is it something going on with me that I need to be worked on? Because maybe there's something about me that keeps drawing these types of people to me. What is it about me that draws those people to me? What is it about me that it seems like there's a reoccurring pattern of folks coming my way that all they want to do is try to use me, abuse me, take advantage of me? What is it about me? And maybe God just has to reveal some things about you, and maybe that's what I was talking about a moment ago. Maybe that is what it is. Maybe you lack a little self-love. Maybe you lack a little bit of self-confidence, self-esteem, to where maybe you feel like you can't stand up for yourself. Maybe you feel like you can't say no. Maybe you're used to just letting people run over you. And there's something spiritually that causes people who are manipulators and users and abusers to just, it's like they sense it. It's like they're just drawn to you because there's something that they can see or sense about you that just causes them to want to just hair you up and find a way to attach themselves to you. You sometimes have to ask God to search you out. Verse 25, let them not say in their hearts, so would we have it. Let them not say, we have swallowed him up. Let them be ashamed and brought to confusion together that rejoice at my hurt. Let them be clothed with shame and dishonor that magnify themselves against me. So he's going back again to talking about God, put a mirror up to them, show them what they're doing, bring shame to them. But he also says, do this to those who magnify themselves against me. And the thing that comes to mind looking at that for this sermon, the thing that came to mind is how we always talk about magnifying God. David is talking about his enemies or his frenemies, and he's talking about how these folks coming up against him are always magnifying themselves. Like I said earlier, amplifying. They're amplifying themselves. They're almost like displaying themselves in a way to try to impress, to try to make it seem like they've got a lot more going on than what they do, going out of their way to live way above their means for the purpose of trying to put on this show in front of folks, trying to be on a high horse and act better than others, trying to act like they're on such a higher standard that they're exempt from any punishment or correction from God. That these people keep magnifying themselves to the point where it's like they can't really magnify God the way they should or the way they might want to in their lives, because they have gotten so caught up in magnifying themselves. It's more about them and their deceitfulness and their backbiting and this, that, and the other than it is about magnifying and serving God. And a lot of times with with enemies and frenemies like this, that's exactly what's going on. It doesn't matter if they're unbelievers or believers who are always in the church. At the end of the day, when they continue to go against what they know is right concerning God, and they always want to cause issues with innocent folks, they always want to stir stuff up, they always want to try to downplay other folks and magnify themselves and bully people who don't want to do things their way. When they continue to do all this, they get to a point where it's more about magnifying themselves than magnifying God. And the only way that the magnification of God can be higher and brighter is when they start to die to themselves, die to their flesh, and they get to a place where they can have some type of self-control, self-obedience, and say to themselves, no, I don't need to be doing this. No matter how good it's going to feel to belittle somebody else, to puff myself up, I don't need to be doing this. I'm setting a bad example for myself, for others, and I can't expect others to want to be around me or a part of my clique, a part of my friends, a part of my church, if all I'm going to do is do this and magnify myself and everybody else here in ways that causes God to get less and less glory and magnification. Verse 27, let them shout for joy and be glad that favor my righteous cause. Yea, let them say continually, let the Lord be magnified, which hath pleasure in the prosperity of his servant. In other words, this, for those of you listening, maybe this sermon is registering with you. Maybe you feel like, hey, this is for me. I'm getting something out of this. I've basically showed you some things to do, praying to God, believing him for your help, for your rescue, not being vengeful, hoping that they can get a wake-up call before things get too disastrous for them, still continuing to be good and showing concern, but to a point where you don't expose yourself so much that you allow yourself to be taken advantage of. I've explained all these different things, but one of the things that you must not forget, which can be an easy thing to do after being distracted and concentrating on others so much, one of the things you need to do is what he says here in verse 27. Basically what he's saying is, I want the people who were not frenemies but real friends of mine and real supporters of mine, I want them to have joy. I want them to be glad. I want them to be blessed because of how much they continue to stand with me and support me and cheer me on. We get so caught up in what the enemy or frenemy is doing that sometimes we neglect those and we stop being good to those who are so good to us. It's like we get caught up in the negative that we start to forget the good around us, those who are good. And so when we have moments where we pray about the things that the enemies are doing to us, we need to also take time to talk to God and say, God, you know what? Bless those who have been good to me. Be good to those who have been good. Let them have joy. Let them have gladness. The same joy and gladness and peace that I'm praying for myself, Lord, let the good folks around me have it too. They are outnumbered. They probably get persecuted for supporting me and being good to me. Lord, show them grace and mercy and kindness and give them blessings as well. Just for defending your righteous servant, Lord. Make sure that you do not forget about those who are being good to you. Pray for them as well. Some of us, listen, some folks, the word says pray for your enemies. Some of us, we struggle with that. We don't want to pray for our enemies, but some of us, we get so caught up in praying for and praying about our enemies, we don't pray for those that are good for us. Something to think about. Finally, verse 28, and my tongue shall speak of thy righteousness and of thy praise all the day long. David right here in this last verse is saying, no matter what, even though you haven't necessarily done what I've asked yet. And even if it doesn't happen, even if, it seems like it takes forever for you to do something, Lord, I'm still going to speak of your righteousness. I'm still going to serve you. Listen, I'm still going to testify about your goodness. I'm still going to serve you regardless of how this turns out. And I just want to close this out saying this. I believe what's today? Saturday? It wasn't yesterday. It was Thursday, I believe. Thursday, it was it was kind of a rough day for me, just mentally and physically. I was really tired, and I just had a lot on my mind, and I just felt so miserable that day. I've been putting in applications for a new job recently, and I put in my 2 weeks notice at the place that I have been working at for like 7.5 years now. And I'll just put it to you this way: we have all had times in life where, especially when you're young, you'll have times in life where you're like, man, I sure don't feel like going to work today. Or, you might clock out for lunch, and then when it's close to time to go back, you're like, man, I don't want to go back. Man, I want to go do this, go do that. I want to go home and go to sleep. I want to go hang out at my friend's house. I want to go to a party. I want to go do this. I want to go do that. And we've all had those moments. But that particular day, it was to a point where, I was on lunch. I had already clocked out, and I was sitting in my car. I was just sitting in my driveway right outside because I had already, ate and everything. And so instead of coming in the house like I would usually do, I was just sitting in the car. And usually I come in and play with the dog and bring him out to pee. But it was like I just sat in the car. I didn't want to get up. I was tired, but it was almost like I had to give myself a pep talk in my head, like, okay, you can do this. You just got, the rest of the shift left. You've made it through the first half. You ain't got that much longer to go. I'm having to convince myself to get back to work and be ready to clock back in for the next half of my shift. And it wasn't like I didn't want to go back because there was something else that I really wanted to do more. I just didn't want to go back, period. I just didn't want to, not for a particular reason. I was just so unhappy with, just so unhappy in the workplace. It used to bring me such joy years ago. The first half of it was just, I couldn't imagine myself working somewhere else because I loved it so much, and it just seemed like somewhere in the second half of these years that I've been there, it just seems like things kind of went heel in so many different ways. And I had tried, like, probably 2 or 3 years ago or something like that, to put in applications to go somewhere else, but it wasn't my time to leave. It was like God still had me there, kind of like on assignment. There were still things that I needed to go through, things that I needed to learn, obstacles I needed to overcome. And a big part of it, and I've talked to y'all about this, a big part of it was just things like standing up for myself, having self-confidence, knowing when to say no, knowing when to, not let people bully me or take advantage of me, things like that. And so there are things that I had to go through for what God has in store for me later on down the line, because being able to know who I am in Christ and have self-respect and self-love is important to be able to do what it is that God is going to have me do soon. But even other things, there were people that I needed to meet and get to know, and there were people who they needed to meet me and get to know me for different reasons. And I'm not going to get into all that. I mean, not trying to put personal business of folks out there, but there were just different reasons why people had to meet me and I had to meet them. And there were people that I made an impact on that I just didn't even know how much of an impact I had on them until later down the line. But there were just different things that had to play out. And it's like, now I know it's time for me to finally be able to move on. And so, like I said, I've been putting in my applications and I got interviews coming up and everything. But like I said, Thursday, it was like I really had to talk myself into going back. because I just was just so unhappy there that the more I thought about it, I was actually starting to get a little depressed. I was really starting to feel down in the dumps about just simply going back and clocking in to finish the rest of my shift. Not there was something that I just wanted to do so bad more. Not, I was just thinking to myself, man, I don't even want to go back. All I want to do is just pull out the driveway and just drive with no particular destination in mind. Just drive and just talk to God. Just talk to God. That's all I want to do. I don't want to be around people. I just want to act like God's right there in the seat beside me in the passenger seat, and I just want to talk. Just, hey, Jesus, what's up? Let's just talk about this while we're going up the street and everywhere else. But of course, I went on back to work and clocked back in, and I don't know. It was just weird. It was just different. It was really trippy. But I had posted on Facebook that I was, how it has the thing where you can click on how you feel, like it'll show how you're feeling, like happy, sad, or whatever. And I clicked depressed, and then as my Facebook post, I was just like, I'm sitting in the driveway in my car, having to talk myself back into to going back to work to finish the shift, but really I just want to go drive and just talk to God. And I had posted that, and then later I had thought about it, and I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't have posted it, because it seems almost kind of negative, saying, showing that I'm down in the dumps, even though I'm just being honest. I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't have posted that. It's not all that positive in a way. But then I thought about it, and I realized something. I realized that there was importance in me doing that for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of times people have this mindset that when you're some type of a minister, a preacher or teacher in the things of God, in the Word, a lot of times, and especially if you have a big church and you have fancy suits to wear when you get up there to preach or teach, people assume that things in your life are always going great. You don't have rough times. People just have that perception that you got it good, and then that's why you have folks that say, oh, well, I don't understand why you want to go to a church and listen to somebody whose life is all perfect, listening to them dictate how you should live your life, but they got it good and they don't really understand your problems, but you're going to go and pay them to tell you, da-da-da-da-da. You know what I mean? Y'all know what I'm talking about. But I realized it was a good thing, because it's important to see that not everybody who teaches or preaches things in the Word is always going to have it pleasant all the time. We're going to have ups and downs just like anybody else, because we're human. But also the other reason why I found importance in it is because a lot of times people are either one way or the other when it comes to whether or not they're going to serve God and testify about the things of God. And what I mean about it is, you have some people who, when they're sad, they're all about praying, they're all about seeking God. Oh, God, help me. God, why am I going through this? God, why did you allow that to happen? Blah, 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 right? They're all about God when they need something, when they want something, when they're sad, when they're down in the dumps. But then when they're happy and it seems like things are going good, all of a sudden they don't care about God, or if they do, they don't show it, they don't express it, they don't say nothing openly about God, and they just act like everything was good and they got there on their own, so they don't have any reason to thank God or to acknowledge God. But then you have some folks that are the opposite. When things are going great, they're all about just cheering God and just, ooh, God, thank you, Lord. It's thanks to God that everything's going so good for me. Do, right? But as soon as things are not going so great and they're sad, all of a sudden, just, I don't want to talk to God right now. I'm not going to talk to him because all these things are happening. All of a sudden, they don't want to talk to God, don't want to go to church. They got to wait till things are good before they go back to church and praise him. Either they only want all of God when they're sad and they want help, or they want all of God when they're happy and things are going good. But we have to be a people who, no matter what the circumstance, we still need to seek God. And so I realized the importance of my post, because not only do people need to see that sometimes, just because you minister the word doesn't mean that life is so peachy all the time, and you're going to have some down times, but also it was good for people to see, because if you have me on Facebook, I'm always testifying and talking about good things that God's doing in my life. But it was good for those same people to see me say, I'm not so happy right now, but you know what? I want to talk to God about it right now. So they see that when I'm happy, I'm all about God, but they see that even when I'm sad, I'm still talking about God. I'm still talking about seeking Him. And so people need to see that. It's not all about putting on a show and acting like things never go wrong. Sometimes we need to just take off the mask and just be real and just say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's going on. But we still need to be able to say, you know what, God's got this. It's like the saying goes, the same God that's in the mountain, the same God that's in the valley. The same God in the daytime is the same God in the nighttime. The same God that's around in the good times, He's still God in the bad times. Come on, somebody. God is always God, and He always will be God. Period. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Heavenly Father, I thank You for another time to minister another word. Lord, I just thank You for Your goodness, for Your mercy. Lord, I thank You that You are a rescuer. You are a defender of Your people. You're a provider for Your people. I'm just so thankful that You're so much for Your people. You're everything. You're the great I am, because You are any and everything that we need when we need it. And Lord, I'm just thankful to serve You in the good times and in the bad. And Lord, I pray that this would be a message that would show people how to deal with enemies, frenemies, how to love on friends, true friends, extra hard, to not forget about them and to not stop showing appreciation for them. And I pray also that people would seek You in all things, that they would know that they're a child of the Most High King and that they deserve to be happy and to be treated right, to be treated with respect. It's okay to have joy and peace in our lives and to seek You for it. Lord, I thank You. I give You all the praise, glory, and honor. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.